Amped up. I'm gonna have to push it away from you a little bit. Whew.
All right, are we ready? Let's go ahead and call this meeting to order at 12:15 a.m. on April 15th, 2020. And Nat,
All
I'll turn
right.
it over to you.
I'm a little disorganized today. There was a lot of stuff going on.
Do you want me to start with the request from?
Yeah, that's our first item, the
Okay.
request from Coos Bay, proposed order 2004-020L.
Yeah. So Roger Craddock serves on the homeless work group for the COVID-19 response, and he's been looking for a spot, they've all been looking for a spot to potentially put tents to house homeless people. It's a couple-pronged approach. But one of the spots that they've identified that they feel might be very appropriate is the National Guard Armory out there in the parking lot. They could put tents there, people would still be close to services. But the request has to come from Coos County and has to be made to the state of Oregon for permission to use the National Guard Armory as a facility to house homeless individuals that have contracted the coronavirus for purposes of basic medical care and to quarantine such individuals in order to decrease the likelihood of spreading the coronavirus to other individuals and the public as a whole.
These are only sick that have the virus?
Or people that have to be quarantined, potentially sick. I believe if you've had direct contact, right?
Yeah, so the wording is homeless individuals who have contracted the virus for purposes of basic medical care and to quarantine individuals in order to decrease the likelihood of spreading the virus throughout the homeless population as a whole. So if we had a member of that population test positive, my understanding would be, if we did some contract tracing, there are people they were in close proximity with, then those people might also be people we would want to quarantine, and since they don't have a home, we can't tell them to go
Yeah.
stay in their home.
Right.
We don't have any cases yet.
We do not yet, but
Okay.
we've still been they've been actively working to identify a location. So there's a location already identified and prepared if that
This
situation
is
does.
entirely different than the other scenarios we were presented with where they want to bring all the homeless people to one camp. Correct?
Yeah, this isn't like if you're homeless, this is where you're going. It's if we were to need a facility in which to put a homeless person or multiple people to carry out a quarantine, then we'd need a place
So
that they could go.
another question I have is, so we have a homeless person that is positive for C-19.
Yeah.
And they were in contact with some other people in their camp, and let's say there was 5 people in this camp.
Yes.
What happens to those 4 people who don't want to go there?
Well, we do have the ability to have a court order that people submit to a quarantine. I'm not aware of any counties in Oregon that have actually utilized that or had to utilize it
It's
at this
pretty
point.
much voluntary though, isn't it? I mean,
Not if we get a court order.
I got that part, but they disappear out the back door in the middle of the night, you're gonna have to go hunt them down? What?
Probably.
So my question is, who's going to supervise all these people? Have they figured that out? And the food services and medical care and all this?
I would think this is more along the lines of a first step of identifying a location
I
and
got that
then
part, but
not obligating us to
I'm going
do.
down the road here, and let's say they've identified a spot, like out there in the parking lot of the Armory. And so then they have a case. So have they thought far enough down the road to take care of all these issues?
I believe that's what this homeless work group is actually actively working on, is figuring out all those. But those are all considerations I know that they have been working on.
Okay, because I've asked that several times now, over the past 3 weeks or so, about, who's gonna take care of all these, if they have any? Who's gonna do this? So,
I know it was brought up in one of the meetings every
Uh-huh.
morning that they were gonna be working with Orca and the food share to
Yeah.
feed
okay.
some of the homeless.
I just wanna know that they are coordinated enough to have, have all these contingencies lined up. I'm not adverse to having this tent at parking lot of the Armory, it's just, I don't wanna have this tent and then they scurry around and try and get things worked out. I want them worked out ahead of time.
I believe they are actively
Okay,
working.
some lines of support somehow.
I think the Armory is a good spot. I mean, they'd asked us
Yeah,
about
I
using our
got
county
that.
parks, and my
I'm not
concern is
adverse to
always
that,
they're
it's
way
just,
out of the way.
I wanna know what they've got lined out,
Yeah,
so they're ready, and they don't have to go scurrying around all over the place.
well, and if you'd like, I can find out when those meetings are held, so you could attend and you could
Sure,
be part of it. Okay,
Yeah.
I'll ask Roger.
I'll do that.
All right.
I think one of the problems with that, Bob, is that whatever they do is gonna be fairly site-specific. And,
Well, if they're at
so
the Armory,
they,
that's the site.
well, I don't know that it is. I've been talking to them, I talked about this with them before, and I talked about Evergreen Court or whatever is next door to it. And they keep on looking. I don't know where they are with the whole project.
Nope.
Well, part of the problem that they have right now is that if they were to use the old St. Catherine's facility, there hasn't been any waiver of state land use law related to siting these facilities. So right now, it could take up to 120 days in order to get the land use approval to use St. Catherine's. So I think they're looking to find other spaces in case that doesn't get fixed. That is something that I took to Rob Bovett from Association of Oregon Counties yesterday, and he said he would speak to the governor's office about whether that could be put in an executive order. He thinks there's a good chance that the governor's office would be willing to do that. But anyway, it's not for sure, clearly, by any stretch. It's still something that's being actively worked on. But, you know, I think for that reason, the fact that we weren't willing to use our county parks, as far as I know, or we have a lot of questions about using our county parks for one of these facilities, the Armory makes sense to me. If the state will agree to let us use it, I think it's a good spot. There's not a lot of neighbors close by. It's already set up for large groups of people. I think it's a good choice.
Yeah, I do too, and I, as a matter of fact, it's a choice that I recommended to Pam Lewis, who I guess Public Health has put in charge of finding a spot. And so I'm glad that, I don't know if it came from that conversation or not, but we had that conversation. She was worried about what it took to get the Army National Guard to allow that use. So apparently Roger found out, and you know, they have a kitchen, they have restroom facilities, they have a lot of stuff there, and it's close by, and it's not a county park. I like it.
All right. With that, do we have a motion to approve order 20-04-020L?
So moved.
I move.
So John moved and Bob seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much.
I like it. I think I have the same ringtone. Must be that county phone, you know?
Must be the default one.
Yeah.
So what else do you have?
Absolutely, it is. So I just want to give a brief update on workplace safety, and I don't want to get into too many details here, but a lot of counties have received OSHA complaints about safety. We've received one as well. You know, I've been working with Charity to make sure that all offices have the appropriate social distancing, that we have policies in place that, you know, limit who comes through, how they come through, and when they need to, so that people aren't going by really close to each other. And we're working on that. Obviously, as this thing has evolved, things have been tightening up, and we've been putting more and more things into place to keep people safe, to keep them separate, have as many people work from home as possible. And I think, honestly, I think we're doing pretty good. A lot of counties have received these, and you know, it's a new situation that everybody's working through. But everybody we've worked with, all the department heads are are very cooperative and are doing everything they can make sure that the employees are safe.
Yeah.
So, just wanted to mention that, briefly. I think that's about all I have on that. So Bob, you, sent me a message earlier, I didn't put it on my list here, but it was with
Mhm.
regard to opening county parks, and I'm not sure precisely what that means.
Well, a
but-
whole gamut of things. May we, just for food for thought and discussion about
I have
opening
specifics to add
hotel,
to that.
motel restrictions, RV parks, county parks, et cetera.
So with regard to the, our short-term rental restriction, I did put it on for a discussion on the board meeting of the 21st.
Okay.
And there's a proposed order that would extend it through May 15th. Just a draft order, not saying that that's what's going to happen, obviously that's the board's decision, but I have it on for that date for a decision to be made, one way or the other. Parks are a little different because
Yeah,
campgrounds are subject to the governor's executive order 2012.
Yeah.
And so campground-specific regulations are covered there, and that executive order has no
Mm.
scheduled end date.
Can we open the day use areas?
I think so.
Can we what?
Can
Day
we,
use.
can we open day use areas if we chose to? I saw questions about,
Right.
the Powers Pond. Can people fish at the Powers Pond? Frankly, if they maintain social distancing,
Yeah.
that doesn't seem like
Okay, why not?
a transmission issue to me.
Eh, eh.
But unfortunately, with the park being closed, you can't use,
They can't
The
use the
pond.
parking lot for the pond.
well, technically, you shouldn't even be
But-
walking through the park if it's closed.
Yeah, but they can also access that roadway that parallels the highway.
I think there's lots of access
Walk
to
over
that
to the
without
pond
closing
easy
the
enough.
park.
What, John?
It seems to me there's lots of access to the pond without going through the park.
Right.
Problem is they're going into the park
Oh.
side of the pond.
Right.
So,
Once you get it, you can only stay on the part that's not
Mhm.
parks property, under our order.
if proper social distancing can be maintained, then we can have it open. The executive order does provide that recreational areas that remain open should have postings regarding telling people and reminding them to maintain their social distancing. So that would be something we would want to be putting up at any access point if we were allowing people in. I can double check there isn't anything after this order that I'm missing, but to my knowledge, there was just a direction to Oregon parks to close facilities that where they thought social distancing could not be maintained. And that's kind of what the governor did.
I had a question about boat ramp that's within Riley Ranch. Why couldn't they go in there and use the boat ramp and the dock and stuff there at Riley? And when we have Riley shut down. But that boat ramp's right in the middle of the park.
Well, and I think there's some ambiguity too with regard to the fact that the governor has urged and provided in the executive order that individuals are directed to minimize travel as much as possible. So there's a little mixed messaging in perhaps in opening certain things up where if someone is taking advantage of that, arguably they're not minimizing travel. However, it's a bit vague to say people are urged to minimize travel. That's not a portion of the executive order I can see
They're
really
also-
being enforced.
They're
So,
also encouraged to go outside and enjoy the fresh air too. And in our order about RVs, there's two exceptions. One is if you're 30 days or longer, it's okay. So if you pull in an RV park and they say, I want to stay 45 days, apparently that's all right.
Yes.
well, it's considered long-term
Yeah, right.
housing.
But there's also provision in there, if you pull in an RV park and there's nowhere else for you to go, that's an exception.
We would want, that's sort of a homeless
Section 2.
individual
Yeah,
exception.
right.
So we don't want to be making people homeless
So
with our order.
somewhere in between, it's a no-no.
I
I have
guess I
some
don't
things
follow.
I think might be pertinent to this discussion, if you'd like to bring them up or here. I was asked specifically to contact county regarding what they were thinking about in terms of lifting their short-term rental restrictions. And had a call back from David Yamamoto, and he said, you're reading our minds. We're into those discussions right now. He says, as a matter of fact, I called state parks to see what they were doing, and they said, and he was talking to the head of Oregon Parks and Recreation, and he said that she said that they're looking at considering a soft opening on May the 8th. And of course, that couldn't be done without the blessing of the governor. But there seems to be some motion, at least on Tillamook's part, and certainly State Parks Park, to reopening and lifting some restriction. So, May 8th is just right around the corner. So it's something we could just wait and see, or just continue to work towards May 15th if we do enact the order that we talked about for next week's Board of Commissioners meeting.
I talked to Douglas County Commissioner and Lane County Commissioner. Douglas is thinking the same thing about reopening up partly. Now, Lane County apparently never shut down their hotel motel RV. They said there was a bit of activity the first weekend of school, spring break, but after that, really not a whole lot of activity at all. So apparently they did take some heat about not closing, but they're unsure whether it was really necessary or not, because there doesn't seem to be a whole lot of people using hotel, motel, RV stuff anyway, because they're all staying at home.
Well, what I'm thinking is that, that we may learn a lot between now and next Tuesday about what the state and other counties are doing, and maybe just keep our ear to the ground and make our decision next Tuesday.
Yeah, I wasn't looking for just decision, I was looking for discussion and thought process about down the road here.
And that decision could include, or that discussion could include both short-term rental restrictions and reopening of county parks.
Well, not parks.
But not the campgrounds.
We're in violation of the governor's order on the parks, unless it's
No,
just
but
day use only.
What I said was the state parks are considering
On the 8th,
reopening, and they're targeting a date, the information I have indicates at least, of May the 8th.
yeah. Right.
So we may have more information about that, because I don't think, they couldn't reopen without the governor's approval.
They
So I
can
don't know
reopen
whether
day
they've
use
talked to her about it yet or not. but-
without the governor's approval.
Possibly
I
day
think.
use, but that's about it. And our boat ramps are open, I don't know, I think theirs are closed actually.
I believe they've
I know
closed
like
everything.
at Tugman, up there at Eel Lake, they closed off the entire area.
Yep.
Yep.
I talked to Curry County, it looks like they're thinking about the last week of April for lifting their restrictions. And Clatsop County is going to do whatever the state is doing. They're waiting for the governor to make an announcement.
Ah, okay. The governor didn't say anything in her press release, press conference yesterday about that.
No.
I didn't hear anything. The only thing I heard was she wasn't gonna release prisoners, which was a good deal. Okay, thank you.
Any further discussion? No. So, are there any, one follow-up on the, something that we decided in the last meeting, but there needed to be a resolution signed to document the decision, which was in the matter of temporarily amending Coos County Rules, Chapter 2, Personnel Policies and Procedures, Section 2.040, Departmental Operating Authority, to provide that, subject to Board of Commissioner approval and the requirements of CR 2.030, department heads and elected officials may advertise and fill positions. It used to say liaison, now it will be a decision of the entire board,
Okay.
consistent with our last discussion.
Okay.
That's resolution, 2004-066L.
Okay. So I move to approve resolution 2004-066L.
Sorry.
Discussion?
Nope. John?
Nope, no discussion.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. I signed it even. You only needed one?
okay.
No.
So I have one late non-COVID-19 item
The MOU.
to discuss, but first, if there's any additional coronavirus updates or information, we'll cover those first, and then
We had a bit of a, I wouldn't say panic, a bit of concern yesterday when somebody who was in the courthouse said that where they worked, there were 2 cases of coronavirus. As it turned out, after investigation, 2 people were tested. 1 is negative. We're still waiting for results to come back today. So, no, there were 2 people with the virus.
yeah, it was a bit of a rumor running like wildfire.
But it did get many elected officials' attention.
So we did relay our concerns to the Association of Oregon Counties about how that was handled and the move. We got an email back from Jeremiah Strongberg from Department of Corrections. And I did send another email back and reiterate, we appreciate that you were not violating, basically, we appreciate that you weren't violating social distancing guidelines at the time the transfer was made. The problem is just as much the fact that we weren't communicated with when the person did test positive. So, that's where we're at.
So the final item I had that I sent to you shortly before this meeting was, as it turned out, we approved a MOU with the Coquille tribe for Sint to use a vehicle, and it turns out that they had put down the wrong vehicle on the MOU. So we have an MOU to use a vehicle that they're not actually using, and so which is a bit of an issue. So they sent over a new MOU with regard to a different vehicle. It's not that they're adding another vehicle to use; they're just correcting it to provide for the correct vehicle.
Okay.
And when this is signed, I'll redact out the actual vehicle because we don't want that going into our board records
Fair enough.
for anyone to see what vehicle they're using, and doesn't seem like a good idea. So it's the
Okay.
same as what was approved before
Yes.
by the board.
Okay.
I would assume we need a new order because of a different vehicle.
This is a
It is a
new
new one.
MOU,
Okay.
and I'll work on a formal termination of the other one, but they're not
Since-
using it,
Since
so.
using this vehicle?
They are not using it yet. They want to use it, and they don't want to use it until it's been approved,
All
so.
right. So move to approve MOU with Tribe and Sint for Sint to use one of the tribe's vehicles.
Second.
All right, discussion?
Now, this isn't a grant, this is just usage, right?
Yes.
This is just, we use it, and we had the discussion last time about it. It was where we are agreeing to, if the vehicle is destroyed,
Uh-huh.
we would be responsible for
We,
it.
the Coos County or Sint?
Coos County, Cint doesn't have funds to be responsible for anything, is my understanding.
And Coos
So,
County has always been the parent agency of
I
SEND.
understand.
Yeah.
But
Ultimately, it's always been us.
It's always, and these are the terms of all the agreements we've had for Cint vehicles.
I know
It's just-
that, but
Yeah,
I just got out of budget. And
Yeah.
we're going, where are we gonna find any money? And then all of a sudden, we're taking on liability,
well, and
possible liability.
this
anyway.
MOU was actually what spurred a scheduled meeting regarding Cint that was canceled once where we're gonna have all the Cint agencies show up, but it was canceled when the whole COVID-19 thing broke out because of
Yeah.
the fact that there were gonna be 30 people there.
Okay. Done with my discussion.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Do we have anything else?
I don't have anything else.
All right. Bob or John?
Not for me.
No,
All right.
thank you.
Thank you. With that, we are adjourned.
Bye, everyone.
Bye. Oh, I put a date on here. Hopefully they all like that date. All right, Bob. It's all yours.